They were so poetic.
Yes. You mean the habit we used to
And
do?
I never saw, right, that's time. Well, let's see. I came to O'Connor's after my husband died at the invitation of Sister Marilat. She asked if I would like to work, and I was delighted. And that was my beginning. That was July the 13th, 1950.
Well, with those many years, Beth, you surely are part of O'Connor's hospital history.
I feel that is a great part of it belongs to me.
It surely is.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And the old hospital was very special. The hospital itself was very beautiful, since it had been a home, and making it into the hospital, it didn't lose any of its beauty. And there were so many special rooms, and all beautiful and beautifully furnished.
Yes, I hear so many people.
On each floor.
Oh, no.
And in those days, patients were kept in bed over 14 days. Major surgery or having a baby, I was there 14 days.
Right.
By that time, I could hardly walk when I went home. But I did get out of bed when nobody was looking.
Not like nowadays, they almost go home before they come in.
24 hours. So the old days, while they were wonderful, the new days are more wonderful. More wonderful.
What are some of your experiences, Beth, during your days at O'Connor?
When I worked, there was only one. I worked the PM shift, and the front door was always open, and the emergency door, and anybody might come in, and it was always a surprise. And I would be the only one in the lobby, the only room that was available. And of course, in those days, there were a lot of babies being born, lots of babies. So every night, there could be 20 babies, every night.
Right.
And in those days, every bed was filled. By midnight, every bed was filled. Now, I never quite understood when I was told that we ought to keep some beds available for emergencies, but they were all emergencies. After 2 o'clock, everybody was an emergency. So I was very happy to fill the bed, and my superior was very happy that every bed was filled. That was Sister Marilla Clark. She was a beautiful lady, beautiful lady. She was the bookkeeper.
What are some of the highlights that you say you had in working with the doctors? I presume you worked much with the doctors.
Very closely with the doctors. The doctor, it was, I worked with a lady who came from Chicago, where hospital was big business there. And she told me of all the blessings of being an admission, in charge of admission. You controlled the hospital. You gave out the beds. Favor was curried with you. So it was an exciting, and it was like a game to fit in 149 people. Of course, that wasn't every day, but our admissions were at least, with the beds filled, and as long as people stayed, at least 30 admissions a day. That was big.
I wondered what was the size of the hospital. So you could accommodate 150
149 people, but that was, we would put beds in the hall, we would put them in the wards. So where there was a 6-bed ward, almost every night there were 4 extra beds. And of course, beds in the hall. If there was a lot of maternity patients, we put beds in the halls.
You went by the adage, always room for more, huh?
Always. Always. The nurses weren't happy, but admissions was. I had to go down and bring up my own beds from the storeroom in the basement. I would wheel it alone. I would bring up a bed and a commode, and the nurses were very unhappy. We accommodated everybody that came in the door. We didn't ask if they had any money. After a while, though, it became necessary, and I could do that because I realized I wasn't asking money for myself, but we couldn't accommodate all these people without money.
That's right.
They were wonderful days. We had patients. One patient was here, probably the longest staying, was here for 10 months, and nobody ever asked for money. But when the ranchers harvested, then they had money to pay for that admission. And that was the longest, 10 months.
Quite a difference from today's circumstances.
Yes, the patients were very vivid to us. It wasn't, they were all people that were very close to us. And of course the families were Santa Clara Valley families, and they came from Gilroy and King City and Hollister. And it wasn't just the patient, we knew the whole family.
Well, they stayed here longer, so you really got to know more
Yes.
about the family.
Oh, yes. And we were special. There was when I first came, my own case was special. My husband came in critically ill and stayed for 3 weeks. And he received very special care. It's been so long. I must tell you, the very first patient I admitted, and I was with, I had one day training. One day there was a young lady who walked around with a book. It was a little ledger, and she put the empty rooms in the book so that she could get a call wherever she was, and acknowledge a reservation. And first patient, we went down to emergency. It was very hard. The elevators went down to the emergency entrance, and the family of this it was a child. He was 12 years old, a beautiful blonde little boy. And I helped. We got him out of the car and placed him in a wheelchair. I put a blanket around him, and we hurried. The boy was very sick. I had no idea what type of case, didn't know what type of cases, didn't know anything about medicine. But the family parked the car. The father parked the car. I think the mother came with us. When we got the boy up to pediatrics, which was on the second floor, the child was dead. That was my first admission, and it was a polio patient. That was 1950. So you can imagine how wonderful it was for me to admit my last polio patient about 1956. Every year, every summer, we had that fright. And every child was suspect that came into the hospital in the summer. So that was wonderful. It wasn't an unnerving experience, that first little boy. So I knew I had been a newspaper reporter and I had met emergencies. So it wasn't the shock that it might have been to an absolute newcomer to that field. I loved it because you ask the questions that I guess all of us want to know but are too polite to ask. And of course, two important things. You got the name and who was responsible. And that seemed to be the basis for all the knowledge I needed for a lot of years until computers came. Then I was a foreigner in a foreign land. Now,
you were with O'Connor Hospital during the time that they made the transition from the old hospital
yes.
to the new one, I presume. Tell us about that.
That was, we had, of course I came in 1950, so there was always the promise. There's going to be a groundbreaking and we're going to have a new beautiful hospital with lots of bathrooms, and there'd be a cafeteria. And so the months went on, nothing happened, but eventually it came to pass. There was a groundbreaking. I went to the groundbreaking. And then in 1954, we made the move. It was January. And that wasn't a happy time for the hospital. There was a change in medical policies. And I won't go into that because I don't know enough about it. I'm too emotional about that time. But when we moved, we had 98 patients. I think that night, rather than make the move, I think 6 patients did go home that night. But we were scheduled to move 98. 92 came over to the new building. And they were moved. They started about 7 in the morning. We had worked wonderful Sister Marillac. I know that that's only part of the hospital because there was the emergency people, but my superior was Sister Magdalene, Sister Marillac. And so we started with the 3rd floor. Many of the floors weren't finished. 3rd floor had everything in it, and the beds were in there, and commodes, and the bells. And so in the morning it came, and everything had been rearranged. We were at a loss, but we covered up. In admission, we always put on the face that everything was fine. Everything was fine. Everybody was going to be taken care of. And we had everything was okay. I don't know how we came through that.
Did the ambulance services help you move patients?
Yes, there were ambulances. There were 2, I believe. Oh yes, there were.
I would think so. They would help.
Everyone that could go home, of course, went home.
Yes.
But when we got to the new hospital, then there had been great difficulty with doctors at that time, and our sisters. They were involved in a battle I didn't understand. And at that time we were boycotted. When we moved to the new hospital, there were doctors that would not come to O'Connor's, who had been the mainstay of O'Connor's. So that was heart-wrenching. That spoiled the glorious day of moving. But we had our friends. We had our people that were our friends. Dr. Vaughn and the group, and Dr. Molyneux, Dr. Pickworth, Dr. Molyneux, Dr. Pickworth were very responsible for our move and our building.
Yeah, staunch supporters, weren't they?
They were good friends.
What changes would you say that you've noticed over the past years? Of course, what year did you leave here?
My job, I would still be here maybe, though it was a long time for me to be gone. The position I held was eliminated in 1987. So the last day I worked at O'Connor's was in April of 1987.
I'm sure even during that time, you saw a lot of changes.
Yes, I saw medicine changed. I must say that whatever the plan was that caused the rift with the doctors, when the war was over, as it was, and our men who had been in the service came back, who had been on the staff but had left for service and came back. When they came back, a new wind blew. The doctors that came back came back in groups and became part of a group, so that the issue that was then dissolved itself. The doctors brought their own group with their own specialists, and so the general practitioners who were fighting to keep things as they were, whatever, I don't know what they were, they just dissolved, they went their way. Many of the doctors that had been on the staff never came back, but there were so many new doctors, and until 3 other hospitals were built, we were at capacity every night. Every night.
We were able to go on for 100 years.
It was wonderful.
We're starting on our second 100th year now.
Even in the O'Connors, the new O'Connors, in 1954 O'Connors, we put beds in the halls when we needed them. Many beds in them. Many.
And you had a large maternity unit here.
And it was lovely. Everybody loved the old hospital because of the big wards. Everybody remembered. I bet your wife was on the porch. Do you remember? Yes, there was a porch that was built. There was a big ward of 6 beds, and there was a ward of 4 beds, and then the porch was built, and that was sunny and beautiful. It had been closed in. Everybody was happy there. It was a lovely place. I think the wonderful part of O'Connor's was, over the years, that after the war, in the old O'Connors, people with appendix came in, and there was no longer that terrible, would they live? Because most patients came in with, on an emergency basis with appendicitis, and it was always a frightening experience because there wasn't the antibiotics. It was God's help alone, and the good sisters, they did a lot of praying. I think they knew every patient and knew the family. It was a family sort of thing.
Yes. I always heard that about O'Connor. I always heard that about O'Connor. You had a real family spirit here.
You could, of course, I became more O'Connor than anybody. You wouldn't think of going to San Jose Hospital. Not that hospital.
Well, with 37 and a half years, you grew up with
Well,
it.
everybody wanted to come to O'Connor. It was a place where it was actually luxury care. And the service was wonderful. I don't know how they did it in that little kitchen, but we had special dishes for special occasions. They were silver-plated dishes for every day, and I have some of those.
What a treasure.
I have. The chapel in the old O'Connor, in the Race Street O'Connor, with the beautiful paintings, it was a place of great beauty. I wasn't a Catholic, so that it was so overpowering in its the flickering volta lights, and it was just such a beautiful place. And I knew I learned all the back stairs. To get from the nursery to the maternity, to get from pediatrics to the maternity floor, to the first floor where all the offices were, you could go through the chapel, so that there was always someone in there, and it was just passing was a benediction, just passing through there.
I've seen pictures of it. What
Yes.
beautiful.
There are some pictures in that book
Very good.
of the nuns at prayer. So, the new O'Connor in 1954 was just breathtaking and wonderful, and the way the beds worked.
I didn't realize that you were also here in this building too.
Oh,
You
yes.
worked until 87, so.
Yes. Yes, of course, when we went into let's see, it was 81, I believe, we moved into.
That's right.
In 81, and with everything was so beautiful. And the cafeteria, we had a cafeteria at long last, and that was wonderful, because in the old O'Connor, there was no place to eat. So if you didn't bring a sandwich, you went hungry.
Well, Beth, you have told us many interesting things.
The
Other
doctors,
things you want to say before we close?
there's one thing, our wonderful doctors, like Dr. Vaughn and Dr. Cook and Dr. Beard and Dr. Thigason, that wonderful group. And there were our great surgeons who, and we had wonderful doctors. I think by their very strength helped people. They were just wonderful. It was a family. We knew them well, and in those days the sisters didn't leave the building without a companion. I was that companion many times. We visited the poor, and there were doctors who brought things to the hospital so we could take to the Carmelites. And I'm glad that I was there at that time. I think I loved every day.
Everyone had a share in the work and in the mission.
Yes, yes.
That's right.
Everyone. I don't think anyone ever was fired. It was a wonderful time, and I'm sure it's the same today. I just am not around.
Well, we work hard at trying to keep it going. So it's different, and you do things differently nowadays in many ways, because of course in the offices the computers have come in, so that has changed a lot. But they're a help too. So, well, Beth, in the name of the 89ers, I want to thank you for joining us and helping us out with this.
It was fun.
It's been a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
We thank you.